What was the trigger for you to go, you know what, I'm going to start a UI UX consulting agency?
When I left the agency and gone to work at the SaaS startup, and the first thing he sort of said to me that stuck with me was, he's like, "Hi, Jamie, it's nice to hear from you. Are you still getting up to go sit at somebody else's desk every day?"
So the first customer that you got through the networking that you did.
So I've never done any outreach in 8 years of my business. So I'm very mindful of the concept of likers versus lookers, right? So the likers are the people that are more likely in your network or people you know that'll engage with your content because they have a relationship with you. And the looker concept, I can almost attribute for some of my posts, how much revenue they've generated over the year.
Someone who's thinking about it or just started of a professional service firm.
Network some more, and then network some more. Don't do any hard selling. People don't like to be sold to in person.
Right. Jamie, thanks a lot for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Very good. So before we get started, I guess if you tell us a little bit about your background before you started 2020 Digital. I know you mentioned you worked in an agency. Tell us a little bit about what you did before and what sort of prompted you to start 2020 Digital.
Yeah, I mean, the story starts, I think, when I worked in government. So I worked for the public library system for many, many years in an operations role. And then I sort of went back to school for upskilling and I got into development. So my first sort of private tech role was as a developer in the early 2000s at a digital agency. Had a lot of great experiences and fun, got to work on a lot of cool projects there. Moved from there to a SaaS startup to head up product and marketing for their Halifax office. Again, had a lot of great fun and success working there. Tried my hand quickly in business consulting, learned a lot of great experiences from there. And then finally, I landed on starting 2020 and I'm coming up on my 8th year anniversary this year.
Congrats. So you started 2017 then?
Yeah, very much in close to, yeah.
Okay. What was the trigger for you to go, you know what, I'm going to start a UI UX consulting agency?
Yeah, so that's the overall user experience is a piece of the services I provide. The start of it though is pretty interesting. There's two things. I had a lot of success in-house at two larger in-house roles. And I would always have conversations with some of my peers and even clients. They're like, why aren't you doing this for yourself? It's like, we'd love to work with you. And I'm like, yeah, but I really like I like the vibe of working in-house with a larger team. But what actually sort of tipped me over was when I'd left the agency and gone to work at the SaaS startup, I reached out to one of my old colleagues and someone I'd worked with in the agency, and we hadn't talked in a while. And the first thing he sort of said to me that stuck with me was, he's like, "Hi, Jamie, it's nice to hear from you. Are you still getting up to go sit at somebody else's desk every day?" Oof. And that was sort of like, at the time, I was like, oh, that's a deep cut. But the more I understood and the more I appreciated it was when I sort of put it in context to some of the other conversations I'd had that were very similar. They're like, "Hey, you have a lot of talent, a lot of skills in many different areas. Why don't you try doing this on your own?" So that was sort of the final one that sort of nudged me to sort of go over and start that journey of being an entrepreneur.
So you were sort of peer pressured into starting this
By a very brilliant colleague. So
that's awesome. That was a deep cut, and that could be an important calling for you to someone to start. So now you decided to make the jump. Walk us through how you got your first customer.
Yeah. So I would say the groundwork and laying the foundation for my first customer came years before I actually started my own consultancy. And what I mean by that is I've always been very community focused and orientated. So very much going to all the networking and social events that were in and around tech and recruiting. A large part of my agency days, I did a lot of recruitment as well to help grow the team. So I was always constantly networking, and these would be with people that are, business owners, peers, or other agencies. And really that, I think, laid the foundation and the groundwork. For me to get my first actual paying client, it was about 2 weeks after I announced I was going out on my own.
That's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
when you started, did you give yourself a timeline that, if I don't get a customer within this time frame, I might as well go work for someone else? Like, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at my runway. So I looked at my nest egg that I'd saved up,
Yeah.
and I gave myself 30 days, though I had a runway for much longer than that.
Yeah.
I could have probably, rode that out for many, many, many months, but I've always been very goal and task focused. So when I got it in my mind, the interesting thing was before, again, if I officially look at the kickoff,
Yeah.
I took a month off to figure out what it was, what my service offering was going to be,
Mm,
and how I was going to position it. So I took a month off. It was the first time I'd actually ever taken a large amount of time off in my entire career. Up until that point, it was maybe a week here and a week there. So
mm.
when I took those 4 weeks, I used it as an opportunity to sort of do some grounding and then figure out, well, what is it that I can offer and provide that can help me stand out in the market? But also, what am I really passionate about? And what am I good at? And what do I enjoy doing?
Interesting. So you quit your job, you took a 30-day break where you basically just heads down thought of the positioning, the offer, the value prop, and then you announced to the world. And within 2 weeks of that announcement, you got your first customer.
Yeah. So I think one of my passions came from when I was in house at the agency. I worked in a senior leadership role. So when the company first started, it was sort of everyone doing everything all the time to sort of help push business forward. And then as the company grew and scaled, I ended up sort of evolving my role. So towards the end of my time there, I was less hands on. So I got away pretty far from the things that I was really passionate about, working in tech. And at that time, it was very much hands on from a design and development standpoint. So towards the end of my in house career, I was mostly focused on strategic direction, digital strategy, and then helping grow the team. So I repeated that when I went over to the SaaS startup. So when I looked at that time that I took off, I'm like, well, what do I really miss doing? I miss pulling my sleeves up and actually doing some hands-on work. And that was, I'd say, would be one of the best sort of pieces of headspace that I got myself into was to never be above the work and always be at some point to be hands-on with the work. So
Mm,
instead of leading sort of client relationships and helping from, a strategy or marketing standpoint, first few years of 2020 was very much focused on just being hands-on and doing a lot of the work that I was very passionate about as I initially got into digital, which then it grew much later to what I do now, which is more leading strategic direction.
So the first customer that you got it through the networking that you did from your network, people that knew of you.
Yes.
And was it you reaching out to them to get business, or they sort of organically came to you? It's like, hey, I know you're doing good work and you're on your own. How did
I
that happen?
think I think I'm probably a bit of an outlier in this scenario. So I've never done any outreach in 8 years of my business.
Wow.
No paid, no RFPs.
Oops, we lose you.
It completely bumped me out. Do you want to
I'm like this.
restart?
No, I think we can continue. What I'll do is, it's recording exactly where you were saying that you have never done paid. It's 100% referral based. We can continue from there and we'll stitch it together. That's okay. We'll go with it. So you mentioned that you have never done zero outreach, no paid media. It's 100% referral based.
Yeah. So, and another sort of fun little tidbit to that is,
Yeah.
I didn't actually even have a business website for the first 4 years of my business. I was very much just at capacity. So when I started to grow and expand the team early on, again, I was growing just based off referrals. So it was very much. I also like to think it was at the time where the industry was, I think, in Atlantic Canada. So
Mm,
I doubled down and focused totally on end-to-end user experience. So this is if you go back 10 years, while it obviously was a major component industry wide for Atlantic Canada in particular, there really wasn't a lot of visibility into what this actually meant and what it could benefit a team or a company. So that's always been my sort of primary practice area as a researcher. So yeah, it was very much just at networking events. I started to share that I was going to be doing what I was doing in house at an agency and at the SaaS startup for myself. And I became fairly active on LinkedIn as well, too. So LinkedIn, I would say, even in the early days and today, has been a primary business driver for me. So just being helpful and sharing content and networking and being of service to people when they ask questions and need help and support. And that sort of has led to a lot of great conversations, which have led to work.
that's awesome. I want to double click on that. Two things: networking and being active on LinkedIn. Those are broad terms. I want to first go on sharing thoughtful. What do you do on LinkedIn currently? Do you have a process that you follow? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, so I try to set up a goal for the month, and I do that a few sort of staggered times throughout the year, and then other months in between, I just sort of share what I'm interested in. But for example, it's one of these things where it's okay to promote yourself and then promote yourself again and promote yourself some more, right? We sort of think that when we put up a piece of content that everyone has eyeballs on and everyone's
Yes.
looking at it and everyone's going to remember it. The
Right.
reality is, that's not the case. So my strategy usually is, if I look at a monthly cadence, I mostly do a mix of sort of personal and inspiration type content. I do a lot of networking and promotion for a lot of the talent here in Atlantic Canada, especially in the Halifax area.
Hmm.
I try to share a lot of useful sort of tips and examples from either recent projects or clients or challenges that I've experienced. And I'll sort of share them out in the open just to hope that it sparks an interest or a conversation with somebody in-house in an organization. But mostly my content, I don't do any hard sales, not even any soft sales really. It's just being of value and having presence. And then not just posting, but getting in and sharing on other conversations as well too. So part of the sort of the process piece of it is, on a weekly basis, I'll look at sort of what others are writing and saying in the areas that I have an expertise in. So customer experience and user experience. And I'll often
Hmm.
hop on, do some searches and filters for content that I find resonates with me. And if I come across something that's sort of where part of my engagement funnel works in, I'll sort of get in, comment, provide value, but then double back and sort of share a lot of that similar value in my own posts and my own feed as well.
This is brilliant. That's something that we see work great is find out where influencers are talking, where people are engaging, go comment just to add value. And then also, if I understand correctly, what you said was the second part is also take that topic and then you go create a post of your own with your own point of view on that topic. Is that
Yeah, and
accurate?
and a big part of it too was getting, and I learned this very early in my marketing days in the agency, was getting away from vanity metrics.
Hmm.
So I'm very mindful of the concept of likers versus lookers, right? So the likers are the people that are more likely in your network of people that'll engage with your content because they have a
Right.
relationship with you.
Right.
Maybe they read it, maybe they don't, but they want to sort of engage with you from some level. And the looker concept, I can almost attribute for some of my posts how much revenue they've generated over the year. So it's very interesting because when the topics I post, I can sort of see the trail of how that's led to a conversion or a conversation.
That is
And you
interesting.
and it usually starts in a DM or an email. And then that's sort of when I do a bit more probing and discovery. It's like, oh, how'd you hear about me? What sort of sparked you to reach out? And it's like, oh, well, you wrote a post recently about subject X. We're actually about to go through this big transformation
Love it.
piece. And we have a piece on this we'd like to talk to you about.
This is brilliant. One question that I ask is you got your first customer, 2 weeks in, and at what point in your journey when you started, you realized that, you know what, this is it. It's going to work. I'm not going to have to dip into my 30-day savings that I had or whatever the nest egg that you had saved. When do you realize that you cannot lose anymore? Do you have that point?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a constant state of reevaluation, right? So
Mm,
if we were to have this podcast 8 years ago, my view on business and where the market is would be very different than today,
mm,
right? So I have a lot of conversations with aspiring entrepreneurs or people that are wanting to transition from like an in-house role to try their own hand at being a business or a collaborator, whatever the scenario is. So for me, one of the concepts I try to remind myself of is get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable. And really what that means for me from a business standpoint, even if things feel like they're going great and you're the top of the world, that's when the work needs to continue and you need to double down on that, right? So if you were to look at even where the market was 4 years ago, or even 2 years ago, we would have talked 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that I use, AI supported systems and tools to run a good portion of my customer and user research, right? I mean, up until that point, a lot of the processes were still manual. Yeah, there's tools available, but we're talking now in a current state where for the products and the tools that are out there, you can achieve so much more with such a smaller team, and it can give you, the ability to, as automate a lot of the tasks that were traditionally manual. And from a product and a market standpoint, that's one thing where even when I have that little moment where I think I'm like, okay, nothing's going to go, I sort of constantly reinvent what the business is, what the positioning, what the opportunity is. And I would say a big example of that is how I've integrated, the marketing components, which I usually come in to work with the team with. But when I do like a current state assessment and review from an operations standpoint, there's usually a lot of opportunity from a business consulting standpoint to help behind in the scenes as well.
I was going to ask, so I've seen you're super active in the community. You go give talks at universities, at incubators, accelerators. And is that a big part of your Like, are you consciously doing this as a part of your strategy to keep your name, brand awareness, and get inbound referrals that way?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. So
Mm.
the best example I can liken it to is I'm a huge stand-up comedy fan. So I like the model that stand-up comedians use when they're testing out new material.
They go to a
They'll go to
local, yeah.
smaller venues, test some bits, see what's working, what's not working. I do the same with talks and doing workshops, but I also
Mm.
do it with content on LinkedIn. So I'll have all these concepts and ideas individually for a story I want to tell, and I'll test them out in smaller bits. And then when I sort of get what I'll call like my minimal viable presentation, I'll then do a road show. And the road show usually starts in January and goes through till March and April. And what I do is I intentionally pick several locations that I want to give a talk at, and I reach out to the organizers of those events and locations. So Voltage, typically a go-to. We have a UX group here in Halifax called NSUX. And then there's Ignite Labs. I'm a big fan of the rural innovation scenes. And then any other sort of other ones that pop up where I think my content might be a good fit. And then
Hmm.
I do the road show and the speaking engagements. Sometimes I record the content, sometimes I
Mm.
don't, but then I use it as part of my content creation distribution plan for the year. And I'll usually end up getting a good 6 months worth of content out of that initial. So for me, it's less about going in doing the talk just for the sake of doing it, but it's also a big part for me to give back to the community that I so
Of
much
course.
am invested in, right? So any knowledge or experiences that I've gained over my 20 plus years working in tech, I'm always happy to have a conversation and share, but I like doing it through storytelling. So that's where the presentations come from.
So interesting. So that is sort of like you actually have a formula and a playbook that you follow with it. Like like, do you have a goal of how many events you want to do in a year? Are there any plans? Like, is that how you think of it?
Yeah, I try to get at least 3 or 4 spots or locations out of one talk. This year I changed it up a little bit, so I tripled that. So I just did another recent talk with it was so much fun, a group of middle school entrepreneurs. So it's a talk I've been working on that I'm using for next year as part of my roadshow about creating a memorable experience. But I got to test it out with a unique audience for the first time to see what resonated and what didn't resonate. And, that one's been super fun. And then I have another big talk that I'll be announcing a little bit later coming up in the fall as well.
So you do this. So let's say you did this talk recently with middle schoolers. They're not going to be your customers yet, but you get some feedback. You get to practice, and this is in preparation for like a bigger stage where you're going to present that talk. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the one piece that's currently missing from this year is we have a business group called the Mixers Club. So it's a small group of professionals here in Halifax, and we would have a peer group where we would do talk presentations and get feedback from the group. So in lieu of that, I've been doing more smaller spots to get feedback. So I'm just looking to see if you've ever seen any of my content online, it's very meme heavy. Like I like using a lot of memes and a lot of humor in my talk. So I sort of call it like business entertainment, right? Or you're there to learn something, but I want to have as much fun, and hopefully you have as much fun as I'm doing the talks.
And in my research, I also found you're a big dog lover and a hip hop lover. You have a lot of hip hop references, which I love.
Yeah, we have 3 dogs, and um,
Yeah.
my
And
hip
and
hop
then
days.
and their names are also very interesting of your dogs.
Yeah, Dolly Parton, Betty
Right.
White, and Leo.
Right. Okay. Very cool. One question I made a note of it when you mentioned, you said you have a goal on LinkedIn and it's not vanity metrics. Is your goal how many posts I will make a month?
No,
No.
it's early in my sort of planning and strategy. I thought more towards, again, what I would consider to be those vanity metrics. The piece now that my measurement of success is consistency. This time last year, I set out a goal to do 2 things. One was to consistently post every day for 30 days. Achieve that. I wanted to make sure it was valuable use for content, but also I use it as an opportunity to sort of, air quotes, build in public my writing skills and my writing chops, right? So it was something that, as a communicator and working in the area that I do, I feel I have great communication skills and written communication skills, but I'm like, I don't put as much time into improving my overall writing as I
Right.
do with, the strategic direction for marketing campaigns that I do, or coming up with what a memorable user experience is for like a digital product. So, last year I set some goals, And I use LinkedIn as the output for that to sort of measure. So, one metric or goal was, hey, let's post consistency for 30 days. Let's get a feel for what type of content, type of imagery works for my audience, but then also look at to see what my reach is outside of my core audience and see if I can build up that network of connections as well.
Okay, very interesting. And did you notice any meaningful change after posting for every day for 30 days in your business and
Yeah,
your pipeline?
yeah. A lot more top of funnel conversations, which I'm always happy to have. More importantly, a lot of longer relationships have developed, right? So, you do a piece of content that resonates with someone or an audience, they interact with you. Maybe it leads to, a quick DM or a conversation. And then maybe there's enough interest there where then you take it off LinkedIn and have like a video chat or you meet in
Mm,
person for coffee. And then from there, you just explore opportunities of collaboration or maybe just future, networking growth opportunities like, hey, I think you'd be a great fit to talk to this person and that
yeah,
person. So
yeah.
growing that audience organically. So I'll use LinkedIn online to make sure that name and presence is there, but also I have a lot of fun posting and sharing content and commenting on others. But my goal is to take it offline and build those relationships outside of these platforms.
You mentioned, and I think you told me in a DM when I first reached out, and I think you mentioned in a in a in a blog post or yeah, in a LinkedIn post. Like in my 20s and 30s, I chase numbers and hustle. Right now, I'm optimizing more for time, which is fantastic. How does that manifest in your daily life, like that philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit, I would say, comfortable for me to say, sort of being mid to late stage in my professional career, because in my 20s and my 30s, I was chasing financial goals. It was to, get that next raise, hit that next financial
Yeah.
milestone
Yep.
to afford X, Y, Z. But then as I sort of um, do a lot of reflection. So every year I do a year end reflection just to look at what worked, what didn't, what am I enjoying, what aren't I enjoying. The thing I value now most is my time. So this is my time with my family, my time for health and wellness, which for me at this stage in my professional career with the knowledge and skills that I've accumulated, that time, reclaiming that time has been, I would say, the biggest reward of being an entrepreneur and running my own business, right? So I'm in a position where I could take that extra project on. It's
Hmm.
going to be a lot of late nights, but it's super cool and fun. So I'll do it. Or I'm just like, you know what? Not necessarily a good fit. I'm okay revenue wise. So I'm going to pass on this one or refer them to somebody in my network.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. I guess we're going to start wrapping up. So one question I ask is, we talk to a lot of people that are earlier in their career, not age-wise, but earlier in their career of starting their professional service. They're thinking of it or have just started. What's one piece of advice that you could give someone who's thinking about it or have just started when of a professional service firm?
I run into this type of scenario fairly often and network some more, and then network some more. And with the networking, online and virtual is okay. Try to get out into your community and figure out what the networking events are. Don't do any hard selling. People don't like to be sold to in person,
Right,
especially if, I come up and introduce myself to you and the first thing you do is try to sell me on your services.
right,
You immediately have turned me away from wanting to have a deeper conversation. Build a relationship. It takes time, right? These aren't short term like tactics to gain traction. It's very much about building trust and confidence and then consistently showing up even when it doesn't feel comfortable. It's like I went to this networking event 3 times in the last 3 months and I haven't really been feeling the vibe. But I find still consistently showing up and adding value, having great conversations. And even in that scenario, try to meet at least one new person, have one new meaningful conversation, reinforce with some of the relationships that you have, get a quick catch up as to where they're at. But the piece that goes on to that, share your story and share your journey online, whatever your choice of platform is. My preference is LinkedIn. It's the
hmm,
only social platform I'm active on.
yeah,
But promote yourself more and more and more. Again, we can sometimes have a fear of like, oh, I'm posting too much. I'm like, the challenge is it's not really social media anymore, it's attention media. So if you think you're posting a lot, maybe people in your network aren't seeing, and that one time you decide to post, they do see it, and that could spark a whole new conversation for you.
that's insane. So the networking bit is super interesting because it does feel like it's not a scalable method. It's not a quick ROI method, and it is uncomfortable. Like initially, like I find it very, very uncomfortable personally. If you go into an event and you don't know anyone, you go walk up to them, they're maybe having a chat with their buddies, and you just try to go in. And even if you're not trying to close a deal, forget hard sell, you're just trying to introduce and have a chat. It does feel a little awkward at first, but I guess greatness lies on the other side of discomfort.
It's something that even today, like even when I give a talk or I go to a
Yeah.
networking event, I still get nervous,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But I just realized everyone's just a person wanting to have a good conversation if they're at this event. Maybe some go with the intention to meet up with old colleagues or connect with people they know, but it doesn't hurt to just to have quick introduction. Again, it doesn't have to be anything more than that. Just quick introduction. Hey, I'm Jamie. I work in product design. Love to chat with you about what you're up to. Simple as that. And then maybe it leads to something deeper, or maybe you can make a referral to someone else in your network to say, hey, really enjoyed our conversation. You should, I'd love to introduce you to XYZ. It might be a good conversation for you to have.
Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, this has been great, Jamie. Thank you so much for this. I love your attitude and how you're thinking about business. Thank you for sharing a ton of very practical insights, specifically around LinkedIn and how you use it and how it drives actual top of funnel business for you and networking. There's a lot of good stuff. So thanks once again.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Cool.